Good morning, everybody. Lovely to have you here, despite trains and all sorts of other stuff that has been going on. I'm supposed to be standing here with a colleague of mine called Harry, but you'll notice there is no Harry. She sends her huge apologies. She's come down with, hopefully, just a really bad cold. She's thinking it could be COVID. So we definitely do not want her here today. Harry works at Whitbread, who I'm sure you know own places like Premier Inn and Brewers Fayre, and she has co-written all of this. So I'm presenting on behalf of Harry as well, and she sends her apologies. My name is Jo. I'm a virtual classroom specialist at my company Lightbulb Moment. I'm also the editor of Training Journal magazine, which is an online magazine for L&D practitioners. What we're here to talk to you about today, other people have had this problem, here we go. What I'm here to talk to you about today is the role of digital skills, but specifically for us in L&D. And look at this in terms of our career development, in terms of future-proofing, and also we need to be thinking, well, just what do I develop? What on earth might that be? Obviously, there's AI, but the world isn't just AI. There's all sorts of other things involved. Obviously, our recent digital skills journey has to be including COVID. We have to talk about that, because that was a massive digital skills transformation for organisations, for workers, for L&D as well, for people at home, where lots of people became teachers. So any parents here who became teachers at home during COVID? A few of you, yeah, so you absolutely know all of that change. And of course we have AI as well. Those of you that were here yesterday would have seen Trish's keynote, where she talked about AI, and this quote is very much highlighting this critical skill. We all know it's here and we need to be looking at it. And what Trish is kind of advocating is, yes, absolutely, use it for course content and creation and cutting down the amount of time it takes to do our job. But also that L&D need to lead this charge and to be able to focus on this strategically. What we find, did I skip a slide? I did. What we find, some research has been done about the changing skills that we've got in jobs. And since 2015, 25% of the skills that we have in jobs changed. But actually by 2027, that is set to double. That's a huge change that we've got coming, and one that we have to manage as well as individuals themselves. The impact that we have with these lack of digital skills is having a direct impact on businesses themselves. There's a huge amount of businesses that are saying, well, we need these digital skills in order to grow our business. We're talking business-wide, not just L&D at the moment. And also a huge amount of those organisations are saying, well, actually, this is having a negative impact on us because we don't have these modern skills that we need. And it's costing the UK economy a huge amount, and that is growing exponentially. So these are the kind of things that we need to be dealing with. Also, when we move from the organisation level down to the individual level, the research is highlighting that people are feeling daunted by this prospect around digital skills development. How many of you are seeing this in your organisation? Have a hands up of people kind of going, I don't know what to do, I don't know what to focus on. Maybe people are being reticent about what to go and have a look at. The thing is, though, that people without these appropriate digital skills, what we're finding is that they're being turned down for pay rises or job promotions. It's impacting them going for another job and applying for that because they don't have the skills that are required. And for a smaller amount of people, they're actually leaving their industry altogether because they feel like they can't keep up. Now, this has an impact, obviously, on their next organisation, on their next job role, that the kind of things that we need to deal with, but it has an impact on them in a very personal level, on thinking about themselves as a person as well as maybe their mental health. The Elucidate report, I think it is saying that actually a huge amount of L&D teams are really struggling to keep up with the idea of what's going on in 2024 and being able to hit the targets in their strategy, primarily because of budget, because we're in a very significant financial climate at the moment. And also, most of them are saying we are absolutely overwhelmed and under-equipped to be able to move forward with these organisational-wide changes. And it's not just AI. We're looking at the financial climate that we've got. We're looking at the impact of things like the wars that are going on around the world. We're also still post-COVID, we're post-Brexit, and all of the other stuff that's going on in our world at the moment. There are digital skills that businesses are looking for when they're hiring and when they're developing these skills. Although the very first one at the top of the list isn't a digital skill per se. This idea of adaptability is a really important people skill, because if we don't have this adaptability, obviously what we then have is we have the reticent, we have the overwhelm. And then all of these other skills are fairly kind of in some ways obvious. You could look at the list and go, well, of course we need data analysis and measurement. But knowing that that's obvious and actually doing something about it in our business, and more importantly in our L&D teams and maybe in ourselves, is a whole different kettle of fish. On the Training Journal website, there is an article that Harry and I have put together. It's quite a long feature. It's got all the references, all the research reports, and extra information on everything that I'm sharing here. So I'll have a link at the end, but if you just go to trainingjournal.com, you'll be able to find that information and more on each of these. So despite this overwhelm, despite this struggle, actually LinkedIn Learning's report is saying, well, actually a really large number of organisations, their L&D departments are trying to build these skills. They are trying to navigate towards the future, which I think is really promising. It's really inspiring, because this future of work is a significant challenge. And it's all about making sure that individuals have this choice. Yesterday, the roundtable discussion was a lot around culture. I facilitated one of the tables, and we talked a little bit about, well, what does culture mean to us as individuals? And one of the things that came out is, well, ownership. It's me being able to take advantage of learning options that are there. So I have a question for you, because this empowering needs to apply to us as well. It needs to be the good old, oxygen mask that comes down for ourselves first. So how do you decide which skills you should develop? So Toby, I'm going to need you with your microphone. What is the way that you're thinking, well, at the moment, I know I need to focus on skill X because of Y. So let's have some hand up. How do you do that? Somebody, lady right at the front here. So how do you decide which digital skills to develop?
Thank you. So we deliver a lot of training on Teams now, and something that's on our agenda. So we deliver a lot of training on Teams now. In fact, the majority. And one of the things that we need to focus on next is utilising things like whiteboards in order to get the most out of those online training sessions.
Fantastic. But how do you know that's what you need to do next?
Well,
mean question. I know.
Not
I'm really sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
Well, sometimes some things are a logical next step, aren't they? It's just like we've done one thing, so we need to make sure we can work on something else.
Yeah, I suppose thinking about it, it's in order to make the trainings that we deliver more interactive, so that the attendees get better value from the experience.
Absolutely. So we're always talking about making sure we communicate the value and people get that value. So you're speaking to my virtual classroom heart. Thank you very much. What other ways do we know which digital skills to go and develop? How do we currently make those decisions for us or our teams? Lady in red.
Hi. We currently have competency framework. And in the competency framework, we have 3 types of different competencies that we expect employees to develop. And one of is like core competencies, and there they have all like different types of digital skills that we expect from different job families, and this is something that we expect employees to use for the navigation in order to make this type of decisions.
Okay, so are they current skills that you need in the workforce?
Yes, exactly. Core skills is something which is related to their specific job families. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And do you have anything that looks at future skills? That could be 3 months or 3 years, but is there anything that looks at that?
Like we have transversal skills that are applicable for everyone. I wouldn't say that's future because it's something that we still expect them in present. So I don't think that we have future skills. Yeah.
Fantastic, thank you. And I think transferable skills, whilst we might not call them those future skills, if we can move to different departments, different job roles, if we can move up in the hierarchy, if that's appropriate in your organisation, but also we take those skills with us as people and people development and humans. So there's an element, I think, of future-proofing there, absolutely. How else do you decide this, either for yourself as an individual or within your organisation, Andy?
I guess from a planning point of view, personally, I don't. I find out that I don't know something. I accidentally find out I didn't know this, and it's only then I start investing time in improving that area. But this has got me thinking that's not really an efficient way of working. So maybe you should have a look at that and look at that. And organisational wide as well. It's on maps, on skills matrix and stuff like that. But thinking as the actual investment in time for the people to learn that sort of thing, it's there, but it's not there, so it's on a list, but where it is in the priority of that list, it needs more thought. So, but for me personally, as an L&D professional, I think I'm pretty good at the digital stuff, but I'm only good at the stuff that I need to know at that time. Yeah. I'm not thinking, I'm not future-proofing that. Yeah. So good talk, because I need to think about that differently.
That's what I'm here for. And there is a gentleman here.
Hi, Andy, I think you kind of pinched a couple of things I was going to say, but in a way I'm also disagreeing with you, because I would have thought what we've got to get used to is seeing what's happening next week or next month. I mean, personally, I'm constantly being de-skilled, so I have to constantly look forward. So if your question relates to what I do personally, I try to anticipate problems. I try and see what's happening next week, not month, next year, but of course it's barely possible to think what's happening next year now. So without appearing sort of too self-righteous, it's down to me, and that's what we should be encouraging everyone to do. Say, what do I need to do next week? What do I need to do next month? I'm not a great fan of competency frameworks because they collapse every 3 months. So just a thought. I'm kind of agreeing and I'm kind of disagreeing with you, Andy.
But let's go back to Andy. He's obviously got something to add.
Fight. I think we do agree. It's accidental at the moment that I find out I don't know something. You're more thoughtful in putting it, and what do I need to know? That for me is a bit of self-awareness now, that if I think about more particular skills that I need for future, I can plan that in. At the moment, it's accidental learning. I fall upon something because it's part of my priorities for right now. I've not looked at myself that in that future-proofing state, particularly when it comes to digital.
So, lady in red again.
Just one thing to add. I think the automation, the need of automating processes also bring us to this decision of which digital skill I need to develop. For example, we created competency framework, and then we needed to deliver it somehow to the company. So then folks could just use it, update their levels and etc. And we looked for the solution, then we found the performance management solution that has all these requirements, and we basically then trained folks on how to use this performance management system. So I think that automation is also one of the trigger to decide.
Yeah.
Just a quick point as well. So we're obviously talking about technical skills here relating to digital, but I think there's a piece around behaviours. So when we talk about historic technical skills, people have been really comfortable with knowing something for a long period of time, a legacy skill. We're now to the point that some people have made needing to know skills quicker. And there's a behavioural change here of probably needing to be comfortable with not knowing what you know in the future. Maybe resilience, maybe agility. So I think like when we talk about technical skills, it's probably also as important to consider the behaviours in order to be comfortable with what do you need to know in the future, or else essentially we are probably, to your point, going to lose good people through that worry of I'm not skilled to do my job in the future.
Yeah. I absolutely agree with you. Did you want to add a point? No? Okay. And I think what we're discussing here is a few different things. One is it absolutely is my personal responsibility on some level at some point to develop my skills as an L&D professional, whether I'm a freelance small business, if I'm in an organisation, or if kind of there's another situation that you're in. But there's also the organisational imperative as part of this and future looking, and there's the people and behaviour skills around that. You know, we don't want, as far as we can, people to be reticent, to be rigid in what they're doing. We need people to be much more responsive rather than reactive. So we've obviously got this business context that we need to look at, because some of the things that we might need to develop in terms of our digital skills might be quite role specific. There could be a new project, a new product, and a really good example of the performance support system that you were talking about comes in. So therefore, we need to be the person that knows how to use System X, maybe train our colleagues and roll that out. That is very much in the now. But also there's this kind of other level we need to be working at, which is future-proofing our organisation, including our L&D teams and us. And that's a little bit difficult to think about, because if we don't have time in our day-to-day, if we're overwhelmed with our work, it can be hard to look up and go, well, what is coming next week? And how do we respond to that? Part of this is obviously going to be, I need to keep my job. There is a reality around that. And when we hear lots of rhetoric around AI taking people's jobs and how that's going to change in the future, that can feel very, very scary. So there's a lot of people at the moment at that point of almost maybe flight or fight of how do I do this when this change is coming? I'm being told this in a very negative, aggressive way. But also what we hopefully can look at, once we can kind of look up from what we're doing, is, well, what do I want my next job or my next promotion to be? Do I want to go into a different department, a different location? And actually, what are my longer term life and career aims? So it could be you've got a long-term L&D career aim and you're on your way and you're working towards that. It could be you don't know. How many of you, let's have a show of hands, how many of you are like, I plan my next kind of 3 to 5, maybe 10 years of my career, I'm on, okay, no one. How many of you are kind of responsive and organic is what I call it, and kind of go with things? Okay, a few more of you. I don't feel so alone now, thank you. Usually people put their hands up to the first one at this point. But what we need to be looking at is our life goals, and that could be moving industries, that could be taking on a side hustle and building that up. But all of this is about using the skills we have, those transferable skills that we mentioned a little bit earlier on. And the other thing that we need to consider as well is we might want to do something, but the organisation might not need that. So we might have an interest in a specific area of AI or VR or whatever it might be. But if the organisation doesn't need that, there's a sticking point. And if the organisation needs you to focus on something, then that's here and now, and that's really important. So there can be this dichotomy, and we have to really find the spark in what's going on. Because if you were here for this morning's keynote about the Sunday night blues, if you don't have that spark of, oh, this week I get to do X or play with Y or achieve whatever it might be, then it can be really hard to motivate yourself into looking towards the future and that skills and career development. So a good example of this, I'm not sparked by e-learning. I've done it. I know it's really important. I know it does a great job. But that doesn't spark me. I don't get joy from creating e-learning. What I get joy from, quite frankly, is this. I get joy from being with people live and having a conversation. So it was no surprise when suddenly virtual classrooms came along. And I was like, oh, so I can do the digital kind of techie bit, but still be live and with people. Brilliant. That totally sparked me. So I focused on it for 10 years with my company. If Harry was here, she would be telling you that she is not sparked by data analysis. She looks at the data and it's all just numbers. It's all just kind of stuff that she doesn't quite get. But she knows it's important. She knows that she needs to be able to analyse information. She needs to be able to report on something because what she is sparked by is going to the business and giving them the right solution that they need. And by having that data analysis, it allows her to have those conversations. She had a conversation with the business recently where somebody had come to her and said, whatever the training need was, can we do an e-learning about what this thing is? And she's like, yeah, absolutely we can. But that's going to cost X amount of business hours across however many thousands of people in the business. So it's not the cost of creating an e-learning product, it's the cost of the productivity in the business. Is that the right way forward, or would you be better off creating posters and having those at the point of need? And fairly obviously the answer was, oh yeah, we'll create some posters. That would be a really good idea. So she knows how important that is in order to do the thing that does spark joy for her job. We've also got to look at that kind of longer term stuff. And we've got to find the bit that sparks joy for us in whatever it might be. So when AI kind of started becoming really big last year, kind of getting a lot of news, how many of you, let's have a raise of hands, went, oh, yay, new tech, great, gonna go and have a look at this? A few of you, great, okay. And how many of you went, another fad, do I have to look into this? Is it really, what's going on? Okay, some of you are nodding but not putting your hands up, I see you, okay. I'll be really honest, I was in the second camp. I was just like, I've done digital stuff since I was probably 12. And there comes a point where I'm not interested anymore. And so I spent quite a few months going, yeah, whatevs, don't care. But there came a point where I was like, this is my job. I have to know about what's coming because I don't want to be obsolete. And therefore I had to find the bit that sparked interest for me. And you have to find that in what it is that you're doing as well. Because as we've heard from absolutely everybody, it's coming, don't ignore it, get on board. So you have to find your angle, your way to get on board with that. Excuse me. We also need to start thinking about this in terms of our digital brand, ourselves and our career, because those two kind of things go hand in hand. It's like, do you want to be known in your organisation as the go-to person on this or that? And that could be around kind of the strategic element. It could be around you're the person that knows the system. So making sure that you're thinking about that is really important. This is a great quote, and it's about being inspirational to other people. And I use that term not in a silly way. I don't imagine you waft into a room and go, hello, darlings, I'm here for inspiration. But the work that you do and the way that you do it and your passion and commitment can inspire other people to do really well in their work too. What this leads me towards is focusing once again very much on the humans. So coming back exactly to what you were talking about behaviours, is yes, we're talking absolutely a lot about things like AI and systems and processes and platforms. But what drives everything else behind this is a focus on the people. Because we are people ourselves, and we are trying to upskill ourselves and our teams so that we can help other people. and to focus too much on the technology and not enough on the human element, on the behaviours, and on the people we need to be, the open-mindedness, the adaptability, the flexibility, means we are going to lose all of the other stuff that's actually really important. Because what we are is a human industry. We are a people industry. And we have to use the technology in order to help us focus on those people, including ourselves. So my question now to you, and Toby, you need to get your running shoes on again, I'm afraid, is having kind of had this sort of discussion and this focus for the last 5 minutes, what are the digital skills that you're thinking, actually, this is what I want to develop, just for me, not necessarily for the organisation, but what am I interested in? So let's have a hand up. What are you thinking, this is what I'm interested in? This is what I want to do. Nobody's interested in any skills. Lady here in the middle.
I'm working currently on the career growth program, and basically what I'm trying to test for myself first is to create a kind of a personal GPT, to train GPT with all the information related to career growth opportunities within the company, and then scale it for employees. The idea is to set up a system that will help me, because I'm the only L&D in the company right now, and it will be nice just to have a kind of a assistant who will be always available to reply and very quickly do this. Yeah,
that's amazing. Actually training your own GPT.
Exactly, yeah.
Pretty cool. Mm-hmm. How many people here are the only person in L&D in their organisation? Okay, so you three all need to get together, most definitely. And how many of you got quite a small team, maybe 2 or 3 of you, something like that? Okay, so this idea of something helping you, that's what technology has always been there for, is to help us do something. Trish said yesterday in her keynote speech, right at the end, that by the end of this year, absolutely kind of what we will have is we will have AI team members that we will be working with and that will be part of our teams. So I think that's very much kind of what's being discussed here. Okay, who else? What are you thinking? Actually, this is what I'm interested in. This is what I want to develop. So let's run up to the front here.
Thank you. I don't know if this counts as a skill, but I find AI fascinating and could get completely immersed in that world and doing interesting things. But the company I work for and the clients we work with are focused on people, and we try and almost steer people away from technology and towards the people, human bit of the connection. And I have not figured out how to balance the two. So it almost feels like the AI interest is something that is almost outside work. But I would love to connect the two, and I don't know who is doing that well or how they're doing it, or if everyone is figuring it out.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the key things about what personally interests us and what the organisation needs, is at some point that might need to be the extracurricular kind of activity. And then is it a case of, well, you do it because you're interested, and at some point the organisation happens to have a need and you're there and ready and can talk about it? Or actually is it that you have this interest, you develop this knowledge, skills, experience in something, and then you actively kind of lobby the organisation? Maybe you speak to your manager, you're looking for these projects. Maybe it's not a client need or something specific that's come in from a product or a project. Maybe it's you going to the DE&I team or the CS&R team, kind of going, well, I've got this interest, can we do something that maybe isn't kind of work, but is an extracurricular thing? It's still part of the organisation. So there's different ways that we can look at that, but I think certainly there's an element of what interests me in taking that on board, and I think that's part of what makes us professionals. Isn't just I can only do this 9 to 5, and I never advocate an organisation forcing you to do something in your own time. That's a whole different thing. But if you have that interest, I think that's really good. What else are we thinking in terms of actually this is what I want to go and look at. We talked earlier on about kind of the question around kind of, well, how do you know what you should do? But right now I'd like to know, what do you want to go and do? There's a few of you here. We haven't had very much over here from this side of the room. Can I entice someone? Thank you. You've been absolutely lovely.
Hello, so I'm quite new to the corporate L&D world. I was a primary school teacher for 25 years, so my digital upskilling has been humongous in the last couple of years.
Pop your microphone a bit closer.
Yes, so basically I'm completely digital upskilling because I'm used to working with 5-year-olds all day long. So yeah, I'm a bit of a sponge, so I think mostly mine is software, just literally getting to grips with all the different software that's available. But yeah, I initially was every weekend learning new software, but I've slowed down a little bit now because that's not possible to keep going. But yeah, I'm still just finding lots of things on webinars that I'll say, oh, how did they do that? And then go and figure it out. So yeah, I'm early, so I get a lot of experienced people sort of probably have a little bit more focus to what they're learning, whereas I'm sort of jumping from, oh, I'll learn a bit about AI, or learn a bit about how they did that in Photoshop, and so yeah, so a bit random.
I imagine you're not the only person. How many of you are thinking, actually, yeah, I need to jump around. It's not just I'm doing a deep dive into AI. It's actually I want to learn this platform and learn that tech and that trick. Yeah, I'm getting some nods. Let's have a show of hands, to be honest. Okay, you're not alone. A lot of hands went up. So you're right, everybody's in their own place on their own journey with this. And I think it's one of the things that we can also think about, going back to this point about digital and personal brand, is a little bit around actually how can we support other people around us. So, you're here at this conference for a reason, because you want to learn, you want to maybe connect with other people. And I was chatting a lot with people last night that one of the key reasons people come to somewhere like this is actually to network and connect with others, as well as obviously the exhibitors and the presentations going on. So what are you thinking about maybe what you do already, maybe what you'd like to do, with regards upskilling yourself, but also supporting ourselves as an industry? What does or could that look like for you? So Toby is poised with the microphone at the front here.
Thanks. So before I came in, I think when I've thought about digital solutions, I have this little voice in my head that sort of goes, yeah, but there's a techie person who's much better at understanding this than you, so you're not going to be the person people go to. So I think your talk has just made me think that actually I could be the expert in how that's applied in an L&D way, so I don't have to be the in and out expert on how Gen AI works, but I could be the person that people go to and using it effectively. So I think that's been really helpful.
Fantastic, thank you. And that's such an important point, because a lot of these things are really big. I mean, AI especially is just massive. So how can you possibly be the expert in it? Because even the experts aren't the experts in it, because the first thing they will say is, I don't know everything, it's too big, there's so much going on, it's going so fast. And when that's only one strand of our role, then that's kind of really difficult for us to maybe keep up with. So it's finding that spark, it's finding that application layer is really important. How else might we focus on our skills, but also our industry and supporting each other? Maybe at the back. It's been a little bit quiet over there. Can I entice someone to say something? Gentleman here.
I feel like I answer a different question every time you ask a question, so I'm sorry.
You're answering something, that's good.
I think for me, I'm a head of, so to the point I have technical people who probably know more than I do. Although I have grown up and through the ranks sort of doing these types of jobs. I think from my perspective, I'd sort of touch on the engagement gap. And I think ultimately, as we know, look out there, so many different suppliers, providers. To your point, digital solutions live and breathe in businesses now. But what we have to recognise, and what I try and talk to my team about, is the engagement gap, that engagement gap between the digital solution and the end user, and how do you make it accessible to solve the problem that you're trying to achieve. So I do think outside of sort of just the specifics of the digital skills, the creating the e-learning, the running the virtual workshops, there is a skill set that sits outside of that, which is things like bridging the engagement gap, and these are the types of roles that maybe our L&D leaders play for our organisations.
Yeah. I really like that, because one of the things a lot of businesses are struggling with, depending on what it is that you actually do, is the digital literacy and the digital poverty that they might have within their organisation. And I think it's really important that we look at this from the perspective of, A, how do we engage people? How do we get people to do something which they might not know how to do? How do we do that communication and almost training piece? But also, how do we support people with their digital literacy? There's quite a few people I know of that are doing things with PowerPoint or virtual classrooms or whatever it might be, and their organisation just kind of expects them to know something and expects them to keep up with it. So I used to be an IT trainer about 1 million years ago, and so my bread and butter was, new version of Office coming out, let's go and teach you Word. We've got the new ribbon, woohoo, let's teach you all about that. But that isn't so much a thing now. We get processes, we get platforms, we get updates coming through. And there's not so much of the IT training. There's a lot of self-learning, there's a lot of YouTube and stuff like that. But going back to Trish's point yesterday about that 10-year-old burst in research, that 1% of our time being 24 minutes a week, how many people are given or have or can carve out that 24 minutes a week? And is that even enough to be able to go and upskill themselves on things? So I think there is that kind of gap going on. I'm going to pause there and say, if you want to read more about this topic, you can absolutely do so on Training Journal. I'm not going to make any apologies for the fact that it's a really long article, because we had a lot of stuff to go and fit into that. We've got 2 or 3 minutes for questions, if you have any.
Just going back to the point before around like the digital skills that you want, and thinking about COVID. So like something I've spoke about in a few businesses now is almost like moving L&D from a nice to have to a need to have. I struggled with that question a little bit. So I guess the question is, should we be learning skills that we want, or should we be learning skills that we need to know?
So my question was obviously focused on the personal at that point, but you raise a really important point, which goes back to always, and COVID was a good example of this, of the value of L&D. So when COVID hit, so much went digital. So that was virtual classrooms, that was e-learning, that was digital comms, that was virtual meetings, all of those kind of things. Now, they weren't nice to haves, they were suddenly imperative to have. In some cases, businesses would have failed if they didn't make that switch or if they didn't develop that. So that's a really important element of what that organisation needs. And we can't always look forward, even if we are looking up, even if we can look at next week or next month or next year and strategise, most of us aren't going to go, you know what, I think there's a COVID-20 coming along, or, the next big thing after AI is going to be this and I'm going to focus on it. Because that's not necessarily the level we're working at, even if we're following futurists and we're looking at webinars and we're coming to conferences like this. But what we can do, again to your point about people and behaviours, is we can try and instill in ourselves, and therefore our teams and our organisations, depending on the levels we're working at, is this adaptability, is the flexibility, is that growth mindset, is that kind of open our mind to that opportunity. I think maybe time for one more question, if there is one. And if there isn't, that is absolutely fine. So I think I need to give you a last slide, this one, which is a survey question. So thank you very, very much for getting involved in the conversation today. I really appreciate that. And for some of you, it's a little out of your comfort zone, so I appreciate it even more. Enjoy the rest of the conference, and I'm here and I'll be around if you want to have a chat. Thank you. Bye-bye.